Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development and another episode of Sales and Cigars. Really looking forward to sharing our interview with John Shanahan from Forsyth Advisors. John wears many hats at Forsyth, and we have a great conversation around supply chain issues, supply chain, what it means, how Forsyth can help the mid-market, and what's really changed from the shutdown, what people's perspectives have changed, and how they view their supply chain. And everybody, John makes a great point during the conversation that people didn't really understand what a supply chain was, and now it's top of mind. Everybody understands that if we don't have trucks moving, if we don't have boats floating across the Pacific, and if things don't get unloaded at a port, it affects us. And there's a lot of things that people take for granted in terms of our supply chain, and that, the power of, have trucks stop moving for one day. Our economy would just freeze. And things would go bad, food would go bad, parts wouldn't get to the right spot. So it's an interesting perspective about how Forsyth goes to market, but you also learn a little bit about, get an inside look at how companies think about their supply chain and how that has shifted since the shutdown occurred. So go grab a cigar, go grab a cocktail, and strap in. We got another good episode here. So, John, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to join us on the podcast. Great view, by the way, behind you. That's
thank you.
You must be a shooter at Forsyth, where you have a big office with a window like that.
It's not as big as it looks.
Yeah, but it's a nice view. So, you're with Forsyth Advisors, as you know, and you have an interesting go-to-market strategy, and I'd like to talk about sales. And one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the podcast was, to talk about your particular sales strategy and the challenges that you have at the company. And you've done some business development, you've done project work, you've been all over the place, so you've got a lot of experience, and you've been a salesperson your whole life. So I'd like to kind of talk about the challenges that you have going to the first step and then the second step, and those gates that you have to go through, and all the little barking dogs that you have in the middle of that. So can you give a quick little 30-second overview about what that looks like? And then I got a couple of questions for you.
Sure. Appreciate it. So Forsyth Advisors, we're a strategic consulting firm. So we're focused on strategic sourcing initiatives to help you procure your direct materials and find potential cost reductions. So we're a little bit unique in the industry because we do target the middle market. A lot of these type of companies similar to us are up in the upper end of the echelon, and the big type companies with unlimited resources to kind of go after these type of things. So we operate in the middle market, and we're pretty niche. We're a boutique consulting firm. We work with the folks until the savings is realized that we identify, and we've done a lot and done very well over the last 10 years.
Awesome. So to get to where you got to go for somebody to give you authorization to proceed on a project, you start with a private equity firm that has portfolio companies, correct?
Correct.
I get this right? Okay. And then from there, you're looking for them to see the value that you can bring to that private equity company's portfolio to help what that company's going to improve their balance sheet, improve their income statement, improve their profit and loss, all of that. And then you got to go and do it again.
Yeah.
talking to that CEO and then probably a CFO. So can you share what the different, because those are different conversations, right?
Sure.
So can you share a little bit about that and the struggles that go along there
Yeah.
to make that happen?
So I think it's helpful to know. So both the managing partners in my firm, the founders, they came out of the private equity world. So they worked for very large companies where they learned how to do sourcing the most efficient ways. Then they found themselves in the private equity world. And because they were at the private equity world, that's where they kind of learned the ins and outs and how to target them. So that's been our focus because private equities, they buy companies and sell them. So it's a repeatable, pipeline of business to us. So that's why we target them. But with that does come in an additional layer. So just to kind of give you that context, why don't you skip the private equity and just go company direct? So it's that continuous pipeline. But it comes with a challenge because first we got to pitch to the private equity world who speak our language, people that understand what we're doing, understand what EBITDA improvements mean to a business. They know what they're looking for, and we know what they're looking for, so it makes sense. That's much easier. But once you get down to the company level, these things are a little bit more foreign to them, and these things aren't necessarily things they're excited about doing. EBITDA isn't on top of mind for most of these folks, so we have to kind of switch our game up when targeting.
So you're talking to at the portfolio company. You start at the CEO level, president level.
Yes.
Okay, and so that getting them to understand, I bet there's they want to push you someplace in the company. Is that fair?
Yes.
They want you to go talk to
the supply chain guy.
Procurement.
Yep.
Okay. So, and I experience that on a regular basis. So can you talk about how you work through that challenge and what some of those pitfalls are? Because even though people that are listening to this, they're not working in the supply chain side, but they have to adjust their message to speak to the context of that individual, that CEO, and then you might have to talk to a CFO sometimes. Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah.
So I mean, you gotta bob and weave and dance a little bit, sort of like Muhammad Ali, if you think about it. How's your left hook?
Not as good as the right.
Okay. So can you talk about how that pivot was? Because I don't imagine that was natural at the beginning. When you started doing that.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what that feels like.
Yeah. So the private equity, a lot of times, luckily for that, they can kind of give us the angle on it and how to approach it because they have similar interests to us. They want to make these improvements, but they have to get the equity company, the portfolio company on board too. So a lot of times they'll kind of give us, hey, you need to target this guy, this the guy you need to talk to. This is what they're having trouble with. So usually we have a little bit more context going in than you might else not have. But ideally we like to target the C-suite level at the portfolio company as well, but we all often get, go talk to the supply chain guy first, go talk to the procurement guy, as the first pass. And what that usually ends up is another roadblock because one of the pitfalls, as you kind of just mentioned, it would be, are we taking their job? Do they feel threatened? And we're, that's not what we're trying to do. The stronger the operations person we're working with, ultimately the better success we usually find. So it's about isolating what's important to them. So which is different from the C-suite level versus the supply chain level. So supply chain folks want their day-to-day job being easier. So we have to isolate that piece of information and then overcome it with the value that we provide. And that value is different between the supply chain guy, the procurement guy, the equity guy. They're all different. So it is quite challenging. We have to be flexible and be able to kind of turn on a dime.
So when I get, I relate it to me. I'm trying to relate this to the audience. So we call on CEOs of companies, managing partners of companies, and then often that person, if they're not a sales background, they will say, "Why don't you talk to my VP of sales?" Right? Which is sort of that push that you get to procurement or to supply chain guy or to the money guy. So I'm wondering if you've ever tried this line or some variation of it. Happy to talk to your supply chain guy. Does your supply chain person make the decision? Can they say yes to the agreement, or does that come back to you? And what that does in my world, and I'm curious as if it might work for you, is for them to say, no, I make the final decision. And what that does for me is to come back and say, great, so let's focus on getting you comfortable that you would proceed given the scenario that we're talking about for what we do. And then I'm happy to go have that conversation with the VP and bring him along. But since you're making the decision, we should make sure you're comfortable before we go there. Have you tried anything like that in the using your words in your world?
Yeah, no, I have tried several things like that, and I think I found a couple things that it helps with. So it kind of helps me identify who the true decision maker is. Is this a guy that really relies on his VP of supply chain? How powerful is that VP of supply chain? Has this guy been there for 10 years, or is he just some guy that just stepped into this role? So it kind of gets me to understand that dynamic, as well as the decision maker, which kind of helps me to arm to be able to overcome it with the value that I'm trying to bring. So yeah, that does a number of things for me that has been helpful.
And that positions it allows you to position what you need to do with that person, because eventually you got to talk to them anyway.
Yeah, and
because you're going to be working with them.
Yeah, and it's also a kind of a casual disclaimer. This is something that we've ran into the past. Supply chain people often feel threatened when we come in, so you might not get an honest opinion on how that conversation went. So throwing that out there, kind of full disclaimer, you get a better understand their dynamic, you understand who the true decision maker is, and yeah, it's been helpful.
And I think the other thing that happens is that you get a chance to really understand if you're getting pushed away, the guy's not really interested, or if he or she is really interested, but that's their decision process, right? It allows you to determine if you're going to get ghosted eventually anyway, and the guy's just trying to be too, because you're in the Midwest. Most people in the Midwest are polite and don't want to tell you to screw off if you're, even if they're not interested.
And sure, and look,
to me, I'd rather get that.
I was just gonna say, yeah, and look, I understand from their perspective as well. I mean, think about it. If I was coming in, I'm the C-suite, the CEO of a company, and I've had this supply chain guy that's worked on me for 10 years, always done great. I want to give him the opportunity to, you're important in my business. What do you think about this? So I understand his perspective as well, and I have to understand that when I'm going in to have those conversations.
Yeah, it's because it's not black and white, right? There's always that big gray area that we have to dance within. That's the fun part of sales, in my opinion, is that it's the same, but it's always different. Each time you do it, it's a slightly different path that you travel, but you're just trying to catch the same components each time you do it.
Sure.
So, in terms of market segments and industries, is there a particular area where you excel? It's a sweet spot for you. I got the mid-market piece, and I see why some of those other folks play up there, but you're actually trying to bring that best practices to the mid-market and give them a competitive advantage.
Sure. And if in layman's terms, if you're buying a direct material, any type of component that goes into a final finished good, we can help. We don't get into the lean manufacturing type stuff where we come in and tell you how to produce it more efficiently and move this box over here because it's going to save you this amount of time. We don't do things like that. It's solely cost savings and potential opportunities on direct materials, stuff you're putting into a finished good. So we don't really get into the lean stuff. Packaging, freight, some services, but again, just not really into the lean.
Got it. How did the shutdown affect your business aside from working from home? more than you were in the office. Um, can't imagine anybody enjoyed paying for real estate space in a Class A office building and not using it. But how did, besides that, how did that affect what you were doing?
Well, I think it just the landscape kind of shifted. You know, everybody's motives, their goals, and everything shifted. When I first started here, it was how can you find how to make this product cheaper? How can you get it here quicker? How can you, make it more lean, more just in time? How can we be more efficient? Now it's how can we put up backup strategies, risk mitigation strategies in place to, prevent, outs and being on allocation in the future. How can we reshore this product to avoid, a 100% premium in freight, ocean freight? So it's always kind of it's the same game, but their goals have shifted. So now everybody's just more about bolstering their supply chain. Supply chain is a buzzword now. I used to tell people I was a supply chain consultant, and they didn't really understand. Now people have begun to understand, and that's kind of what the pandemic has highlighted and kind of brought it front of mind for a lot of people. Not in the procurement world. It's, people actually felt when they couldn't get toilet paper, and then they're like, why can't I get toilet paper? Well, there's the supply chain, and and with every product has their own specific issues and challenges and processes where if one thing goes down, China shuts down, or wherever that product's made, that's it. We found that out with toilet paper. So COVID just kind of highlighted, the potential issues that can arise from things such as a pandemic. And as a result, people just, reshifted their focus to preventable measures to, have something like this happen in the future.
And the risk mitigation, to me, like having all of your production in Mexico or all your production in China, doesn't give you flexibility when something gets shut down for whatever reason or gets challenged for whatever reason. And I think that's one of the reasons why somebody would want to work with you, given what I've learned, is that you know where to go. You've already got that knowledge and base. That's your job, is to stay current on should we go to Thailand or Vietnam or wherever the hell, right? Where can I get this product? You guys have that, constantly monitoring that, constantly staying on top of that. Where your supply chain guy at a portfolio company, that isn't what they do. They're not looking to. They'd have to go do all that research, and you can bring that to them. That would be a reason for them to have a conversation with you, wouldn't it? A differentiation?
Absolutely, yeah. The type of work we do, the level of detail that we get into, I'm not aware of any companies in the middle market or lower middle market, a lot of even, upper market that has the resources internally to kind of go after it the way we do. So we have a deep bench of analysts and project managers and lead analysts that kind of go after and, bootstrap and go do the dirty work that a lot of companies aren't willing to do and don't have the bandwidth or resources to employ the folks to do it themselves.
Yeah, and you know which rocks to pick up and look under rather than than just guessing. You have the insight and all that experience from the partners to be able to apply to what you do against all of your clientele. I think that's a differentiator, that being able to verbalize that and explain that to somebody is one of the challenges that we have in sales, is to get that, because that person might be afraid that you're going to take their job, right? Because their limbic brain just goes immediately to fear, and part of that is to help them see that this is going to make them look good. This is going to make them be able to have an easier time doing their job. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think a lot of what we do is, for example, we ultimately is always up to the actual company to decide what they want to do. But we'll frame it out and give you all the different variables, and with each different strategy that you could go down that path, what are the challenges and concerns and opportunities associated with it? And then it's ultimately up to you to decide what's the best fit for your business. But, for example, everybody wants to go to Mexico. It sounds great. Reshore here. We're not going to have to deal with ocean freight, $20,000 a container. But with that comes challenges, because most of your components are still tied, you're sourced in China. So whether you get it made in Mexico, the raw materials, the direct materials, are still going to be tied and sourced from China. So at the end of the day, are you diversifying your country risk? A little bit, but not as much as a lot of people think. And it's not always what people want to hear, but we can lay it out in a way so that people understand all the different dynamics involved with reshoring a product or something like that. So
Well, sometimes giving people bad news is what we do, but then giving them a perspective that allows them to make better decisions is what that message does for them. Gives them an opportunity,
sure.
even though it is bad news. I'm curious, and this is just my curiosity. If you look at the average product that an American goes and buys from Amazon, or if they went to a store and pulled something off the shelf, just say the average electronic product, how much of that, even though it says made in America or assembled in America, how much of that product is actually built here? How much of that is, really put together?
Okay. It varies industry to industry type of product. So, stuff that's, easy to ship.
Television.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's put it this way. Anything that's easy to ship from China, that's efficient to ship, is more likely going to be mostly finished there. Anything that's, you can't ship efficiently is going to be more manufactured here. How about a nutraceutical bottle, for example? You buy a bottle of, I don't know, turmeric or any type of anxiety medication. That bottle itself, guaranteed it's going to come from Southeast Asia, just because that's where they have a comparative advantage. No other country can really compete. Now, the raw ingredient itself in there, that's most likely going to come from Asia or somewhere else, not U.S., because we have a lot of laws and different things that restrict us from producing some of those things. Once again, they have the comparative advantage. There's, the label itself. That might be made in America, and the work to put it in the bottle, that's done in the United States. So we can still make it say made in the USA, but when 90% of everything else is coming from, not domestically. So
they'll ship a big jug of something. I know it's not a jug, but they ship a big container of juice, and then that goes into a factory, and that's dumped into a little bottle, and we put a sticker on it and made in America. Is that
yeah, we basically take
the gist of it?
A lot of times, it's as bad as the key is, it has to be I'm trying to think of the word, a significant differentiation. So let's just say I'm making a power supply. China could literally, or whoever makes it, they could literally put together all the components in a box, give you the sticker to put on the box, the assembly, the power cord that goes into it, put it all in this container, ship it to you like a kit, and you could assemble it and still, made in America, because it's a functional change, because you took it from a bunch of nuts and bolts and you made it into something. But in reality, all that is still coming from them. And you find where you can take this screw and screw it into this one, or you can come two parts that come pre-assembled to kind of save assembly time on the U.S. side. I'm doing a terrible job describing this, but I think you get it.
I think you did a good job of explaining it, because it's you get all the raw. A kit often is what you get. Here's all the pieces, go put it together, and because I'm in Detroit area, so the auto industry, I mean that's what they're doing. They're getting pieces brought in different places, and then the car is assembled in the States someplace, whether it be Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, Michigan, Ohio, but everything else is coming from someplace else. So when you have a chip shortage, you got that little tiny thing that's causing the car not to be able to be put together, and it's not as bad as it, because they have cars sitting. We've got parking lots full of cars that can't be driven because there's no chip. They got to push them onto trucks and then go put the little chip inside it so the software works properly. It's it's exactly what you're talking about. It's one little piece.
And you said cars, and that's it. That's the perfect example that I should have used. I recently did a project for a car cover manufacturer, and on the website they told "Made in America." That's one of their big selling points. But in reality, behind the scenes, the raw material fabric, the thread, the backing, all that, the labeling, the packaging, all this is coming over from Southeast Asia, being shipped. They wanted to move to Mexico. It was being produced in China. They wanted to move it to domestic production, so we helped them reshore it to Mexico. And then we got it all there. It's being produced there. And when they look back and take a step back and look at it, okay, well, we're not shipping finished product over to us, but we're literally shipping everything that goes in the product over to us. So what did we ultimately do here? We just kind of added another intermediary, and it's ultimately it's not the best solution, but I mean, it
is what it is. It's where we are,
and maybe it makes sense for their business and it hits what they want to do.
Yeah, it's to me, it's just and this is just my opinion of it should say assembled in the U.S., not made in the U.S. It's the same thing as organic vegetables, right? You can become an organic vegetable. That all matters what happens in the last 30 days. You can put all kinds of crap on top of this stuff until the last 30 days, and then it can't have any chemicals on it, and it's still organic. People don't really understand. And there's a bit of dupeness.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to pick on any companies because, look, I've been in this long enough to know that it's not just one company. Everybody is doing it. And it's
everybody.
And it's for the good things because it allows me to get this cup for $5 because they have a comparative advantage elsewhere. If you weren't utilizing the comparative advantages available, then we wouldn't have all the products, that we enjoy today. So you can't really look at it as a negative thing. You just got to understand the dynamic for what it really is.
Yeah, and my point is that the consumer doesn't really get it, right? They say, "Oh, made in America," and we're good to go, and it's not, and that's fine, right? Because nobody wants to pay, $20 for that little cup that you're pointing at, because that's what it would cost.
Exactly.
It is what it is.
Some products wouldn't exist. Actually, so I'm going to cut you off. So we actually did a project for a dollar store. Okay, well, a low margin supplier. So when the pandemic happened, there are certain items that they could no longer sell where they had enough margin on it that the consumer would be willing to pay for it. So there's some items under $1 that when the costs go up because it costs too much to ship, no consumer is going to pay $1.50 for that item. That's the threshold that they're willing to pay. For that reason, those products no longer exist. That's kind of what happened now.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so let's pivot to cigars. I'm curious as to how, when, and if cigars play in your world.
If you're on vacation, for me, when I'm on vacation, I'm sitting on top of a rooftop bar in Mexico. There's not much better than sit back and enjoy a cigar with some friends and family. It kind of gives me this. I think it's a part of the process. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. It just relaxes you and it makes you more comfortable. And it's a social thing for me. So it kind of lets down your guard, and you just kind of have casual conversation. It creates a casual environment, and that's something I really enjoy.
Yeah, there is a social element to it, and it relaxes you. That's interesting. The idea that it gives you something to do with your hand, right? There's a tactile element to it that distracts your brain from having to do something. And for me, it seems to allow me to be more engaged with somebody else in a conversation. It sort of just frees things up, and I can focus on either the environment, right? If you're sitting on a rooftop in Mexico, you can, the view is there, and then then you're with your family and friends. That's just a social piece that. Probably not all of your family and friends, but
I think it helps you kind of take a pause sometimes. You take a puff and you just kind of think about what you're going to say, and it makes you more of a calculated, more of a better response. I think it gives you the time to think about what you're about to say. For example, I know it's kind of awkward, but Elon Musk, for whatever reason, he always takes these long pauses. And, after those pauses, sometimes he'll come out with some of the most intelligent, type of conversation, thought-provoking conversation. And I think partially it's because he's actually thinking about what he's saying. He's just not repeating the first thing that comes to his mind. And, having the cigar and kind of like a prop, a lot of comedians, they use cigarettes as props. Bill Burr, he had he quit smoking cigarettes, but just carried one on stage for the longest time because that was his prop. That was what he was used to doing. So.
Yep. And now he switched that to playing with the microphone stand and leaning on that.
Yeah.
That's part of his. If you watch his specials, that he's always constantly got that little lean on that microphone stand,
twirling it around.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. So, mid-market CEO, private equity firms, those are the people that should reach out. You're a LinkedIn guy. Is LinkedIn the way to reach out to you best? What's the best way to get a hold of John if somebody has a question or wants to have a conversation?
Shoot me a direct message on LinkedIn, probably the best way, or you can find my email on our website. If you source stuff, we can help you do it better. Bottom line.
So I would imagine there's more than one John Shanahan in your on LinkedIn. So we'll have that info in the show notes, so somebody doesn't have to pull off to the road and write it down. But LinkedIn's a good way, and email's a good way. And Forsyth Advisors is the website. So we'll have all that in the show notes. Anything else you want to add? Looks like you got a nice little afternoon in St. Louis. What do you got weather-wise there?
Weather's beautiful. 70 degrees. I actually might be like mid-60s today, but we've had some nice weather this weekend. So pretty excited about the weather going forward here, watching some college basketball. Who you got in the tourney?
You know what? I have been, the last 4 days I've been in Florida, Indianapolis, and Fort Wayne. So I haven't even cracked the bracket yet. All I know is that my alma mater got put into, I think seeded number 11 in Indianapolis, and my daughter's school got seated in the same venue. So we'll see. I don't imagine. Michigan isn't going to get much past the first round in my uninformed assessment. Well, who do you got? Who do you have?
Oh, well, I'm a big Iowa Hawkeyes fan. My wife's alma mater. So been following them for a while, and they won the Big Ten tournament this weekend. So they're ready to rock and roll, jumping in with some momentum, and hopefully we can capitalize. Got a big, tough opponent in Kansas if we make it to the Sweet 16. So we get through there. I think clear sailing ahead to the finals.
Which region are they playing in? Out of? They're one of the high seed, right?
Yeah, they're actually they did terrible in their division. So I think they're still a 6 or 7.
Okay, because of the tournament, it put them up there.
Yep.
All right. Well, it beats an 11. Say that.
Sure.
And their coach didn't go smack any other coaches around. So, all right, John, let's leave it there. Appreciate you taking some time. Enjoy the weather. Enjoy the rest of the tournament once it gets rolling. By the time this airs, we'll have a national championship. So you're calling Iowa. We'll see where that lands.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time as always.
Thanks, John.